Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. This is Patrick McGrath Muñiz speaking to you from New Territory, Texas. Welcome back. In this video, I'm going to be sharing with you some insights on the first archetype that shows up in the tarot, the Fool, or El Loco. In this series, we'll be exploring the 21 major arcana and the archetypes that lie behind it, plus the Fool. We'll begin with this one, since it's numbered 0 in most decks. We assume that this is the first card. First of all, I think it is the most important card from the deck, for it represents the key to understanding the whole. That is, in my own experience, and how I was introduced to the tarot in the first place. Being 0, it represents everything, everywhere, and nothing, and nowhere, all at the same time. I've been exploring the possibilities of this archetype for over 20 years now. Perhaps it's the archetype that I'm most familiar with, because it was, after all, my friend Cesar Villanueva Cordero, who was a perfect embodiment of this archetype, who introduced me to the tarot to begin with. It is often said that there's a thin line between insanity and the creative genius. This is revealing of the archetype of the fool, el loco, or the madman. Great artists and innovators come up with great ideas and original creations, but as soon as they become institutionalized and harnessed by corporate interests, they become sterile, predictable products that follow the market and are guided solely by numbers and not by intuition. Plenty of examples of this could be found in the music industry, but also in the art world. Contrary to the pejorative label often associated with this individual that has been received from our society, there's much wisdom that can be found in him. Without his unpredictable sense of humor, curiosity, spontaneity, random creative spirit, there would be no originality in the arts, no innovation in science or technology. Everything would be square and boring. The fool, or el loco, possesses attributes of the child and the jester rolled into one curious, quixotic, and imaginative character that represents new beginnings. Perhaps that is why the Fool is the only card in the tarot that has no number and is represented under a 0, indicating no value, outside measurement, and at the same time an egg-like embryonic state of full potential. His actions are organic and break all the rules. This archetype is the embodiment of imagination and creativity. Perhaps because everyone makes fun of the Fool resorts to a self-deprecating humor. They don't resist humiliation, and their own limitations, that being intellectual or physical, are not concealed, but rather worn as an armor. They don't take attacks seriously. They start by making fun of themselves. In that sense, they're way ahead of everyone else. Because the Fool is represented by 0, he is in this perpetual state of limbo, being and not being. Very much like a colony. You're not sure if you're a country, if you're a non-incorporated territory, or what are you? Sometimes Puerto Rico shows up in the maps, in world maps, as a country. Sometimes it's just part of the US, and sometimes it's not even there. So in many ways, the island of Puerto Rico and many colonies in the world resemble the same archetype of the Fool. They belong to this vague state of being and not being. They are in this constant transitory flux of becoming. That is the reason why they know no boundaries, no attachments. The only thing they are attached to is life. Everything is in constant flux. So they just go with the flow. The Fool, or Loco, is detached from ego. Perhaps that is the reason why he often finds himself sharing and giving everything he has. He embraces the totality. He experiences community to its fullest. He breaks away from every single material attachment, and he finds joy in just sharing everything he has with the world. Just the way that my friend Cesar did. 30 years ago when he sold me the tarot for $5, and he would do the same thing with everything he had. He just didn't care about keeping things in his possession. He just gave them away freely or for $5, which is symbolic in a way. That is why this is perhaps the most selfless, less individualistic card there is. Unlike the Magician, which used to be like the Fool, the Magician has been changed by his possessions. Now the Magician carries with him a certain bias that is colored in a way and affected and influenced by his material belongings. He has a table full of toys and trinkets and stuff he has accumulated throughout the years, and he's displaying in front of us. The Fool has nothing to display. He's all free. Free from attachments to the material world. Free from conventions. Free from everything that keeps us chained to the shackles of consumerism. So not to over-idealize him, for he is not without his flaws, his shadow aspects. Let's be reminded the Fool does not plan for the future. He is often unprepared, irresponsible, chaotic, and many tasks he begins, he never finishes, or simply gets easily bored. But like the Magician, he is playful, has this childlike behavior, very much driven by anarchy, this irreverent energy, primate, vitality, self-indulgence, daydreaming, idyllic, utopian-seeking, freedom, mischief, cleverness, a sense of humor, joy, fun, liberation, novelty, originality, and simply being different. These are some of the attributes that we can point out about El Loco, or the Fool. They have a sense of curiosity, mystery, adventure, and a sense of awe. Be like a child, fascinated by the unknown. You may not have all the answers, but that's okay. This is an advice the Fool or someone embodying this archetype would give. Believing in UFOs, ghost stories, and conspiracy theories feeds El Loco within us. After all, having an imagination is, in alchemical terms, the materia prima that sparks that creative fire within us all. He is the transitional character that defines our times. He may look like an adult, but thinks like a child and behaves very much like a teen. A defining trait of our postmodern electronic generation. Erratic, unpredictable, although there's a definite pattern. Spontaneous and with no plans. He's prone to accidents and what he would call, in Puerto Rican terms, salao, which literally means salted, but really in English it would be jinxed. And he would just make fun of himself in those terms. Like, tu salao, everything, I'm jinxed. But he would live the moment, the present, and enjoy. Be open to new experiences, to traveling, to living life to the fullest, and then being able to tell those stories and anecdotes, because he is a true storyteller by nature. And he doesn't take religion seriously, neither politics. He's not a fundamentalist. He doesn't, as I said, he's not attached to anything. On the contrary, he questions everything. And he starts asking all these questions. And it's contagious if we're open to it. And there's much to be learned from it. A perfect example of this is Socrates from ancient Greece. The Fool represents a middle finger to social conventions, going against the grain. Creativity in the Fool shows itself in the manner of painting the edifice, changing the windows, changing the decor, perhaps in the craziest way, but perhaps you don't go to the extent of tearing down the whole building. Even without tearing down the castle, he manages to break the social rules. And he doesn't give an F about what people think about his actions, the way he behaves, what he says. The best comedians, just think about it, the best comedians don't care. They just tell it as it is. They speak their minds, like George Carlin. The jester makes fun of the king. The trickster in every joke has a kernel of truth to teach us. There are some Christian saints from the Catholic pantheon that seem to resemble the image depicted in the Fool from the Tarot. These have been my inspiration to create my own version of El Loco in retablo paintings. Notice that Saint Roch and Saint Lazarus seem to be traveling while carrying a staff or crutches and are accompanied by a canine, guardian, loyal friend who seems to be working the role of a spiritual healer, protector, and guide. What about the dog that's in the representation of the fool? We can see that he is accompanied by the dog. Well, dogs know people. They can discern by gut feeling. Dogs are loyal, best friends, alert, insightful, adaptable, loving, and joyful. They represent fidelity and guidance. So all of these attributes can be compatible with the fool. The dog is connected to the afterlife. After all, if he is a guide, he is also a psychopomp animal, living in between worlds. In other words, he would guide the souls of the living to the afterlife, according to Mesoamerican myths and the Greeks and the ancient Egyptians. This timeless image of man and dog brings us back to its prehistoric origins and humanity in its infancy. It reminds us of this millennia of symbiotic evolution and inseparable friendship. This duo has gone through thick and thin, surviving together, sharing the bounty of the hunt, but also enduring the hardships of homelessness with the lack of food and shelter. This relationship runs deep, and it is crucial to acknowledge this in order to understand this archetype. This loyal mascot has become not only his guide and animal spirit, warning him of impending dangers, but he is also a loyal companion, worthy representative, and manifestation of the fool's essence and soul. There are plenty of examples in art history and literature and in popular culture of the fool or loco. Here are just a few examples. You can take in popular culture the figure of Charlie Chaplin. In Latin American pop culture, you would have El Chavo del Ocho from the 1970s Mexican comedy show created by Roberto Gomez Bolaños. Chespirito, a very popular character in Latin America for some time, and still to this day. Juan Bobo, a character from Puerto Rican folklore. Cantinflas, one of the best known legendary comedians from Mexican cinema. El Cipitillo, a trickster-like legendary character from Salvadorian folklore. And then you have in the history of art, you have in a painting by Diego Velázquez, the gesture named Don Juan de Austria. Gestures were an important part of court life in medieval and Renaissance Europe. Don Quixote de la Mancha from the novel of Miguel Cervantes. In pagan Hellenic mythology, he is the eternal outsider resembling the foreign god of wine and Dionysus, or the Liber Pater, the free father, with his juvenile spirit, with a whimsical sense of humor, pleasure-seeking, and often driven by wild, irrational behavior and the pursuit of joy and ecstasy. In archetypal astrology, El Loco can be matched up with the planet Uranus, which is essentially Prometheus, the planet of awakening, discovery, electricity, radical, unconventional ideas, inventiveness, creativity, innovation, irreverence, youth, irrational, explosive energy, rebellion, unpredictability, anarchy, and revolution. In the colonial, neocolonial narrative, El Loco can be identified as one who does not follow the established laws or conventions and disobeys the social political boundaries set by the colonial power, that be the church or the crown. In the case of someone like Juan Diego, he was not believed at first by the church authority and colonial powers for his report of the Virgin of Guadalupe. The Archbishop of Zumárraga, to whom supposedly Juan Diego showed the tilma with the image of Guadalupe, does not mention Juan Diego in his accounts. He was insignificant to the whole story. In this colonial painting, we can see the Archbishop and other church figures presenting the image to the Pope, Juan Diego as a zero, un cero a la izquierda, is almost kept out of the picture on the lower right section of the composition, reflecting on social colonial prejudices that still define the Americas today. The indigenous saint is seen as someone out of line with the colonial conventions, very much like our local archetype. And finally, in my Tarot Neocolonial de las Americas, published by US Games Systems, my first tarot deck, I decided to depict the Puerto Rican Jibaro, a traditional icon of the countryman who farms the land. He carries a bag on his back and is followed by a black and white dog as he looks back at us. A sugarcane refinery can be seen in the distance, an echo of past industry, already abandoned in the island. The character in the card is inspired directly after my good old friend Cesar, who introduced me to the tarot in the first place, like I said before. Like a Jibaro, he is a purveyor of magical realism through stories and anecdotes that bridge the fantastic with the ordinary. In the English language, fool or foolish is usually used in a pejorative sense, while loco or locura in Spanish carries a quixotic connotation with the possibility of being a force for good, as it goes in the Spanish saying, de músico, poeta y locos todos tenemos un poco. Of musician, poet, and madman, we all have our measure, implying that madness is one of the main ingredients for creativity. All of us carry this archetype within us, but it is only fully enacted by some and more evident in artists, performers, clowns, comedians, and children. When we see this card, it can signify an erratic or foolish behavior with unpredictable results. It can also imply that someone with these qualities is present in our life and has a valuable lesson to teach us. Perhaps we're taking things too seriously in life and we need to lighten up. Thank you very much for listening and watching this video. Hope you enjoyed and learned something from this. In the next video, I'm going to be talking and discussing the next archetype, which is El Mago, or the Magician, from the Major Arcana of the Tarot. It's number 1. So if you like this video, hit the like button, make sure that you subscribe, hit the notification bell, and I'll see you in the next one. Thank you very much. Bye.